He's getting mic'd up right now. So our next presenter is Marius Obert. He's going to present to us the SAP Cloud Platform with Microsoft Graph. So visualizations here. Marius told me he started his career at SAP 7 years ago with a bachelor program. And at the Cooperative State University in Karlsruhe. Anyone else from Karlsruhe? Oh, cool. And then he moved to Silicon Valley. Oh, that's a cool story. Where he worked as a UI developer for SAP Labs in Palo Alto. Why? Rubbing elbows with Steve Jobs.
He was already back by then.
Or Bill Gates or someone. Where he learned to use and love SAP UI5. After tasting too many bad beers in California, hey, what a comment. He decided to relocate to Munich, where he now works as an evangelist for the SAP Cloud Platform, with a special focus on the cloud partnership with Microsoft. So, Marius, Dankeschön.
Okay, thank you. So, thanks for having me here. We already heard a couple of great talks today. There was one about UI5. There has been a couple ones about the cloud platform. And this presentation here basically lives in the same realm. So before I start, you already heard, my name is Marius, and I'm an evangelist for the cloud platform. And in preparation for TechEd this year, we had a job to draft a couple of tutorials that feature partner technology, one of which is Microsoft Graph. And Maxi is over there. We had a lot of fun, like reading ourselves through the tutorial, like playing around, figuring out how everything works. And in the end, we were a little bit sad because the only thing that we created was just one tutorial, which is great, but we couldn't like pack everything that we learned into this tutorial. So that's why I had the idea to like evaluate what we learned and put everything in this presentation here for you today. So what am I going to talk about? First, I want to show you or tell you why I think SAP systems and Microsoft systems complement each other perfectly, and then I'm going to give you a short introduction to the SAP Cloud Platform and to Microsoft Graph. And then we come to the fun part. I'm going to show you what we built for TechEd, and after that, I'm going to show you how we built it. So we will do a live coding here. So fingers crossed that it will work. Okay, so you've already heard it probably a couple of times. The SAP Cloud Platform is the platform for the intelligent enterprise. And so in June, we passed the mark of 10,000 live customers. And we're constantly adding new features, getting more features there, more customers. And even our partners see that. And so by now we have over 780 partners building apps on the cloud platform. And what SAP is for the business suite, that's basically Microsoft for the Office suite. I mean, I'm sure every one of us uses Outlook every day, probably Word as well. PowerPoint is what I'm using right now. And even the cloud numbers speak for themselves. So there are 135 million people using Office 365 on a monthly basis, and over 400 million people using Outlook.com, which is the personal version of Outlook if you want. And those numbers are really cloud scale. I mean, we're talking millions here. And so it's different than the old SAP and the old Microsoft that you knew, where the data was basically captured in silos. This is really open data that you could talk to an API, use the cloud SDK, and really like work with the data easily. And this brings me to this quote that I found here from Tim Berners-Lee. One of the issues of silos is that they have the data and I don't. And to be fair, I took the quote a little bit out of context because he was talking about social networking silos, but I think the core idea is the same. So having data in silos limits the potential of data, and opening it up gives you a lot of new opportunities to use the data. And this is what I want to show you today with this talk, like how to opening up the silo. And so I recently saw this slide at TechEd this year, actually. And I don't want to go into detail because you see a lot of information here. And I would probably spend half an hour just to talk about this slide. So the thing I want to emphasize are the different platforms that you can see here, 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 and here. Because I feel like maybe it's a lot, and it's hard to digest what platform to use for what. So you already know the infrastructure layer, which you can use SAP data centers, but you can also go to Microsoft, Amazon, or Google. And you know the platform, the software platform, which is the S4 system, C4 system. And what has been there before was the application platform with Neo and Cloud Foundry, and the lately released ABAP on Cloud. What's new, or what will be new, because it's not available yet, will be the container platform and the function platform. The container platform will leverage Kubernetes, And the function platform will help you to integrate the software stack with the application stack. So a possible use case would be that you have a machine learning cluster running on Kubernetes, your main application on Cloud Foundry, and some function as a service which are connected to, let's say, Concur or C4HANA for a ticketing system. So whenever a new ticket arrives, you can use the trigger as a trigger as a function as a service, which injects the data into the learning data set or the training data set in your machine learning cluster, and every once in a while it runs, trains a new model, and this model can be used in your new environment. And like basically the glue that's going to stick all those platforms, all the services running on the platforms together will be is the service manager you can see on top of here. So it goes across all platforms. And why am I talking about this? So the tool or the application we're going to build later will run on Cloud Foundry, on the cloud platform, on Cloud Foundry, on a data center of a Microsoft Azure data center in the Netherlands. And since since we will use Cloud Foundry, I thought I'd give you a short introduction to that tool as well. So basically, Cloud Foundry is an open source application platform as a service. And it's not only open source, it is open. So you're not forced to use a specific framework or a specific version of an environment. You can really bring the entire platform to the cloud. And your platform, it could be Java, it could be plain Java, it could be Spring Boot, it could be Rails, Ruby, whatever you want to bring. And we're also not telling you you have to use a HANA database. If you think, okay, a memory cache is enough for you, feel free, use Redis. You can bring everything in there. The only thing Cloud Foundry and the cloud platform tell you how to do it is to use a microservice architecture, which means your application shouldn't be aware of any specific dependencies. It should only be aware of backing services. And backing service is like an abstracted dependency. And SAP already offers to you a couple of state-of-the-art backing services that you can simply plug to your application. For example, oh, nope, that was the wrong one. RabbitMQ, messaging queue, or Mongo database. But SAP only pre-packages it for you, and if you think, okay, you need something different, you can just add your own backing services to your Cloud Foundry instance, which is really great. And one of the services SAP already offers to you out of the box is the destination service. And the destination service basically helps your application to manage app destinations, which could be a web resource, an OData service, and SAP gateway system, as in this case here. And so the way it works, you have to create a UAA service that you can see here and the destination service, and then you bind those two services to your application. This application can be written in Python, Node.js, Java, whatever you want. And it always works the same, how you access your destinations in the same way, no matter which language it's written on. Step one is you talk to the environment variables around your application. So Cloud Foundry will inject information about the services in the environment. Step two, you request an access token for the destination service from the UAA service. So UAA stands for user account and authentication. And with that access token, you actually contact its destination service and request information about the destination, which could be the URL, an access token, the password, the username, whatever you have saved in the destination before. And with that information, you can simply just access the ES5 system in this case. Or that's what we're going to do later. And why am I telling you this? Actually, it's not that important because we will build a UI5 application that runs on a special web server on the Cloud Foundry environment. And that web server knows how to do everything. It knows how to connect to the UAA. It knows how to speak to the destination service instance. So you only need to configure the OpenUI5 application to tell the application, I want to speak to this destination, and then the web server will redirect it for you. And so this brings me to the first live demo part. I will tell you later why I do it now, so it needs a little bit of time to start. So I'm pretty sure all of us know and love the web IDE. Okay, no laughing, good. So creating a new project. Let's MTA, yes. Let's call this sit. Oh, you know what, sitmook. Finish. And adding a UI5 module. Nice, so question to you, what would be the next step if I want to deploy to Cloud Foundry? So, what? Click on what? On? Okay, which? Okay. Okay, and then? Yes, so this would be, yes, you're right, but it was mean because I didn't tell you that I'm also showing to you a new feature today. So we have this feature flag here. It's called HTML CF runner. And because previously when you clicked on run here, it deployed the application to the Neo environment. But if you enable this flag, and it's still in beta, so I hope everything works today, the process starts and it's going to build the application and deploy to Cloud Foundry, which will take about 5 minutes. That's why we do it now. But if I change something in the source code and I click hit again, it will update really fast. So we need to wait maybe 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. Since this is a demo, it will probably take a minute, but it will be way faster than what you learned, what we had to do before, because before you had to build the application and go to the mtar and then deploy this mtar to the Cloud Foundry. Okay, let's go back to the presentation now. Nope. Yes, no. Okay. Okay, so yeah, perfect. Okay, so now I come to the Microsoft Graph part. Microsoft Graph has been created in 2015, and it basically builds on top of the Office 365 API. And it's actually a superset of that API because you can do way more than just talking to Office products. And yeah, it says it connects multiple services and devices, and some of the services are, you can see here, this list is non-exhaustive, but it already shows you what you can do. I mean, you cannot just read your emails, you can actually also send emails. If you access Excel, you can not only access the metadata of your files, you can also browse the worksheets, access the value of cells or the formula in the cells. I don't know if you know Microsoft Planner. It's basically Microsoft's version of Trello, so it's a lightweight project management tool. You can just assign tasks and group tasks and assign them to people. So a possible application of the Microsoft Graph would be that you check, okay, do I have any tasks that are behind schedule? And then I send this person an email to ask, hey, can you please work on it? And when you're super mean, you can go the detour over Active Directory, find out who's the manager of that employee, and send him an email as well. When you're mean, I'm just suggesting. So, and I could tell you many things about Microsoft Graph, but I think this screenshot is probably more than what I could say, because this is the Graph Explorer. It's just a web tool, so you can just Google Microsoft Graph Explorer, it will be the first hit. And it looks a little bit like Postman. So on top you can see the HTML verb, the endpoint, and the URL. And then you can just click Run Query. And you can log in with your Microsoft ID, and then you will get your personal results. But if you don't log in, you will get some sample results, like it's just a default user, but you can use most of the APIs with that sample user, which is really great because you don't need to give access to your, you don't have to give your API access to your API to that tool. You can just use the sample, like this web tool, and just explore how the API works. And yeah, what else? There are also some sample queries, so you can read the documentation or just click on any of the queries here. It will update the field here, and you just have to hit Run Query, and then you will see the result. And what you can also see here is that it's an OData compliant service. It's actually OData version 4 compliant service that Microsoft uses for this tool as well. But it's not there are some stepstones that you could follow. So I just want to tell you what we learned while we were building it. So Microsoft Graph is not Azure Active Directory Graph. Azure Directory Graph is deprecated and you shouldn't use it anymore. And it's easy to mix up because you're still using Azure Active Directory endpoint to authenticate for the graph, but you don't use Azure Active Directory Graph. And also the Microsoft Graph has two endpoints. One is called V1, the other one is called Beta, and basically the naming is very clear. The Beta is more experimental and they don't guarantee that it would remain, so maybe they just change some endpoints and remove them. They could change the response, so it's nice to play around with the Beta endpoint, but the V1 endpoint is really what you can rely on and build productive applications. And oh yeah, another thing that might be confusing, I already told you that Microsoft Graph uses Azure AD an endpoint to authenticate, but there are two Azure AD endpoints. There's V1 and V2, and V1 is more mature and offers you more like features, but it doesn't support personal accounts such as Outlook.com or Hotmail.com accounts. And for the purpose of just authenticating, what you need for the Microsoft Graph, the V2 endpoint is basically the preferred way, just because you can cover a wider audience with it. So this is the flow that your application will go through when you want to access Microsoft Graph. So step 1 is basically your application talks to the Azure AD version 2 endpoint to get an access token, and that's where the user needs to enter his credentials and give permissions to your applications. Then the endpoint will return an ID token, and with this ID token you can request an access token, and this access token basically allows you to talk to the actual API. And you can basically see you can split this graph here, or this figure, in two halves. The right half is super easy. It's just sending an HTTP GET request, attaching the access token in the header, and done. So there's a library for that like builds the URL and attaches the access token for you, but it's super easy and you probably don't need to use an API for this half. This here on the other side, you can already guess, involves a lot of redirecting to Microsoft, back from Microsoft, checking if all the fields are set correctly. So I wouldn't recommend that you implement this part of the protocol yourself. So, and that's why Microsoft offers an SDK for you. And actually, Microsoft doesn't even offer one SDK. There are a bunch of SDKs for all major platforms out there. We can ask Holger. For Microsoft Graph? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But it's easy to do.
Yeah.
on top of the
Okay, yeah, okay. So what I want to tell you, so I didn't use all of them, but I used the Node.js one, and I don't know if you develop a Node.js and use Express as a web server. So basically this is a strategy for Passport.js, and you can just plug it in your application, configure it, and then you're done. So it doesn't matter if you use Facebook authentication, Google authentication, or Microsoft authentication with this SDK. And what we're going to use is this JavaScript SDK. It's written unopinionated, so you can use it with any framework such as OpenUI5, and that's what we're going to use later. Or not later, no. So this is the application we're going to build. It's basically an OpenUI5 based web application that runs in the Cloud Foundry environment. You see some products that are from the ES5 system. So we use the destination service to access the OData service in the ES5 system, show you some product information here, and then the user can click the login button. Let's do this. To log into his Microsoft account, and then he can search his emails for some keywords, which could be the product name or the product category in this case. So I log in here. Now I'm logged in. I already see my username. Then I just browse to product here. So wait, let me click stop. So you saw this was super fast. So, and this, I mean, the data wasn't cached or anything. It was just requesting the API in that moment when I click it. And it, should press play. And then the result is already there. When I click on a subject, I can basically see a new tab opens, and it shows me the email in Outlook.com. Okay, next slide. So, and this slide basically shows you two things. One is how the application works internally, but it's also the steps in which we're going to implement the application. So step 1, the client requests the web application from the cloud platform. Step 2, we fetch the SDK from the Microsoft Content Delivery Network. Then we access the OData service, which is going to be redirected to the on-premise system, back to the client. The user logs in, and eventually we talk to the Microsoft Graph API. Yes, I think we're ready to hack, right? And this is also the reason, this is the reason why I triggered the initial creation of the app before, so we can like start developing right now. So you can see the application started in a new tab. This is the sign-on page. Oh, thank you. Mirror displays. Yes, okay. So this is the application here. For now it uses SSO, but we're going to change this now. So you see this is the basic scaffold of an HTML5 application. Let's copy and paste some code from my cheat sheet here. And so I don't want to explain you how UI5 works, so I'm just copy and pasting that part. Okay, save. Then I add two functions to the controller, which basically just support the navigation between the different pages that you saw. And yeah, remove the single sign-on. That's basically it. Okay, and now you can just click run again, and let's hope it will be faster this time. Oh yeah, I can use the time to actually show you how the design or the layout in the layout editor. So basically you already saw it in the video, the application consists out of 3 pages. This one is the page that shows you the product information, it's bound to the default model. The page that shows you the details information, also bound to the defaults model. And the results page, which will be bound to a JSON model, which is named Microsoft Data in this case here. And also, like, let's go to the controller, show you that code as well. So basically, when I click on the list item, oh, okay, this won't work because I forgot this part, to copy this part, yes. Okay, I need to wait until the first one. Never do a live demo, right? So anyway, so what happens when I click on a product, I basically get the application, get the binding path of the list item that I clicked, like get the second page. Okay, this loaded. Let's do it again because this was the controller was broken anyway. And oh, see, this time it was super fast. Yes, great. But obviously you won't see data because I haven't like added the OData service so far. So let's, okay, yeah, do this part first. So now we create the application, or we tell Microsoft that we want to create an application. So I log in here to this apps.dev.microsoft.com. Say add application. Like, oh, muss. Okay, now it said muss. And then I need to know the URL of my application. So add platform, web platform, the callback URL where it will send a user back to us. And then we want to also access the emails of the user, so I want this permission as well. Okay, save. And now we need to like save the configuration in our web application. So I just create a new file here named msal config.js. Paste my code and replace this app ID with the app ID that we just got. Where's the index.html file? Okay. I think everything looks good. What is it complaining about? Where is it missing?
In the end, after line 11.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay, let's run it one more time. And you saw, like, in the old application, the title was still set to UI. And now the new one is here. Super fast. It was not even 5 seconds, right? And then sit demo. And if I look at the inspector, we can also see that it loaded the MSAL library from Microsoft and the configuration file. So let's add the OData service as well. Manifest JSON. Okay, so we add a new data source. So we have this data source. That's the name of the OData service, and it should redirect all the requests to this OData service to this URL. And then we add 2 models. Down there, where's the models part? So one sessions model, this model is just saving some user information, such as the email address of the user that logs in and his name. And this is the model of the OData service here. It's the unnamed model. Yeah. And so one thing is missing. Now we need to tell the application that we actually want to use a destination, because now the application tries to access the OData service at this URL, but we haven't told the application that this URL is actually the destination that we use in the cloud cockpit. In the cloud cockpit that we created in the cloud cockpit before. So pretty print. So it says match everything that starts with /SAP and send it to this destination called SAP Gateway. Can also, while it's loading, show you the destination in the cloud cockpit.
But the Microsoft APIs directly call not your destination.
Yes, so we also have this open connectors in the cloud platform, and they also support the Microsoft Graph API. But for now, we just call it directly. Okay. Oh, it was already here. Application routes. Yeah. Down. Yes. Trial. Destinations. Thank you. And here you can see SAP Gateway. That's the name of the destination. And it's still loading. Yeah. No, so that's why we haven't released it so far. So sometimes it's very fast, sometimes it takes some time. So I cannot tell you what the reason, but they're working on it. Oh, there it is. Nice. So it's loading. And here you can already see the OData service browsing the products, seeing the picture and the name. And then let's do the last step, adding the Microsoft part. Because you cannot click on it right now because we haven't implemented the login function. So just add 1, 2. Oh. So basically what this code is doing, it's just doing the redirect, what I showed you before in the diagram, basically step 1 to 4. And also a step saving this to the model. And this code that I'm copy and pasting now is doing the 5th and the 6th step to access the graph. When you click on press link, call graph API with the query message suffix. Run it. No, super fast again. Actually, I can already log in before the OData service is returning. Oop. Yes. So it asked me if I'm agreed that it can read my user information and access my emails. Sure. Sure. Okay. One more time. Now I should see my name up here in a second. Nope. Refresh it, maybe. Okay, I mean, you already saw it in the video, so. Okay, let's see if the. Me? Okay. Okay, so, but it's not my fault and not SAP's fault because somehow the graph is not returning my request. Yeah, I mean, okay, but yeah, thanks for, yeah. And one more note, so this is a link to the tutorial that we built for TechEd. So if you want to write this application, do it yourself, feel free to use this tutorial here. Or, yeah, if you have problems or issues, that's my Twitter handle. You can also shoot me a DM on Twitter if you have some additional questions, or come to me later today.
Yeah, I think all of the slides from all the presentations will be posted, so
Okay,
I'll
perfect.
be taking care of that. So you can reference all these links afterwards. So, are there any quick questions that you take care of now? Otherwise, you could bring them into the break. Yeah, with Marius, he'll be around. And Marius brought up an important point. I've been forgetting to remind everyone to tweet actively. You're all in Twitter. You all should be tweeting this whole event. So, okay. All right, thank you very much.
Good.